All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover how the retelling of an entirely ordinary weekend party actually holds the secret to mastering some of the most stubborn English grammar rules out there. You know, we often think of grammar as this super dry, textbook subject full of abstract concepts, right? It's kind of the thing that puts you to sleep faster than that one boring party guest who corners you by the appetizer table to talk about their morning commute. But today, we're going to completely flip that idea on its head. We're going to see how the very structure of our language is perfectly mirrored in the chaotic, fun, and very human events of a weekend gathering. It's not about memorizing tables, it's about seeing the rules in action.
Just picture this for a second. 16 people crowded into a small kitchen, a leg of lamb in the oven, a match nobody could look away from. By anchoring these abstract rules to the concrete, everyday events of an ordinary Sunday exactly like this one, we can effortlessly understand how to capture real life accurately on the page. Because honestly, almost everything worth knowing about a handful of the most stubborn English patterns shows up somewhere in the vivid retelling of a weekend party. We just have to know exactly what we're looking for among the guests and the chaos. Okay, the action. Modals in the kitchen. Let's start right in the heart of the action and look at the specific rule for whatever verb follows a modal. Think of that high-pressure kitchen environment. There's hustle, there's bustle, intense chopping, stirring, people talking over each other. In grammar, our action words often get paired with modals. These are words like would, could, will, can, should, and must, along with the different shapes of the word do. These are basically the helpers that set the mood and the tone of the action, very much like a highly stressed head chef barking orders over a hot stove. And modals are exactly like that strict head chef. They demand the absolute plainest, most undressed form of the verb right after them. Think about it. You wouldn't wear 3 crazy, colorful hats in a professional kitchen, and you definitely shouldn't dress up a verb after a modal. You say nobody could believe how loud the room got, not believed. Or he would always cook the same dish, not cooked. These helpers strip away all the extra endings and completely insist on the base form. It is a strict, non-negotiable rule of the kitchen.
But here's where the recipe suddenly changes. Once the word have quietly slides in between the modal and the verb, the dress code changes entirely. The plain base form? Yeah, that just won't cut it anymore. Now you need the fancy, completely dressed up past participle, kind of like a guest arriving in a lavish tuxedo to a super casual dinner. It's must have forgotten, absolutely not must have forget. The real skill you're developing here isn't just reciting a textbook rule, it's actively noticing whether that tiny little word have is quietly standing in the way, forcing you to upgrade your verb.
Let's move on to watching the match, and a little bit of time travel. Let's step out of that kitchen and head into the living room. The football match is blazing on the TV, and we're going to see how reporting a past thought actually requires a bit of grammatical time travel. Imagine being entirely caught up in the energy of that room. You're jumping off the couch, shouting at the screen about what you swore was going to happen just moments ago. Whenever you're reporting a thought, a hope, or a promise that already happened in the past, a genuinely fascinating shift has to occur in how we speak. Think of it kind of like a loop. You have a past thought, but inside that past thought, you were looking forward to the future, hoping for a very specific outcome. To express this correctly, whatever the word will was doing inside your original thought, it has to physically travel back in time to become would so it can step in and do the job now. It's literally a future in the past shift, and it perfectly preserves that exact feeling of anticipation you had before you knew the final score.
Imagine turning to your friends and saying, "I was sure Spain will win." It sounds slightly off, right? It just grates on the ear a little bit. That's because the certainty itself belongs in the past, so its internal future has to agree, shifting will to would. "I was sure Spain would win the final" is really the only way that works. And the exact same shift happens after words like thought, hoped, promised, or believed. You're essentially bringing a piece of the future back into the past with you.
So the doorbell rings. As new guests arrive, there's always that awkward, split-second moment of figuring out who knows who and who needs a formal introduction. Well, articles cause trouble in a much quieter way because they do the exact same thing. They force you to constantly answer this one vital question. Is this brand new information or something the listener already knows? Saying, "we invited a friend" introduces a completely new person to the party, but saying "the friend" only works if that specific person had already been mentioned earlier in the evening.
One version of this article problem is incredibly clean to spot. An article and a possessive can never, ever share a noun phrase because they are fighting for the exact same real estate in the sentence. It's like trying to have 2 people driving the exact same car at the same time. It just doesn't work. Whatever sense of belonging the possessive is already carrying, the article has absolutely nothing left to add. It is always his car, and literally never his car. The possessive will always win that turf war.
All right, describing the guests, as versus like. While you're gossiping with friends in the corner of the living room, maybe analyzing outfits and careers, you might naturally use as and like. These two tiny words get confused constantly, and it's because they do almost the exact same job from two completely different grammatical positions. They act like two interlocking puzzle pieces used to compare things or describe roles, but they have entirely different structural requirements. Knowing which one to invite into your sentence makes all the difference in the world.
The trick here is actually beautifully simple. If someone is just a noun, a shining star standing on their own, they sing like a professional. But if they are physically doing the job, putting in the actual hours, they work as a translator. If only a noun is coming up, reach for like. But if a verb is coming, or you're naming a functional professional role, reach for as. Or if there's a full clause doing comparative work, like as you know or as she always said, then as is for sure the only correct choice.
Let's talk about pacing, the party with commas and flow. Now, the pacing of any party can be pretty erratic. Sometimes it drags, sometimes it's frantic and completely rushed. Your punctuation is basically the DJ of your writing. It dictates that exact rhythm and flow. Commas cause a very specific kind of trouble here because when we speak, we naturally just pause to take a breath. But on paper, if two completely independent, fast-moving sentences crash into each other with nothing but a flimsy comma between them, you end up with a massive grammatical train wreck.
The trap that catches even incredibly confident writers is that words like however and therefore are heavy. They carry real weight. If you drop a heavy word like however onto a flimsy comma to join two full sentences, the sentence literally breaks. It demands the strong, reinforced steel of a semicolon standing in front of it to hold those heavy train cars together. If you just use a comma, you create a comma splice, and it completely disrupts the smooth flow of your story.
Next up, a museum of exceptions, irregular participles. Think of it like a formal three-course meal being served at this party. We've got the simple appetizer, the hearty main course, and the elaborate, complex, three-tiered dessert. Well, in English, so many of our most ordinary, everyday verbs stubbornly demand these three entirely separate courses rather than just sticking to two basic forms.
The secret to mastering these isn't brute force memorization, it's rhythm. Just like learning a dance step as the music plays at the party, the absolute safest way to hold on to these is as small, rhythmic three-part sets learned together. Go, went, gone. See, saw, seen. Eat, ate, eaten. If you try to memorize them as isolated spelling variants, they will always slip away from you. But if you practice them as a natural cadence of three, they become permanently ingrained in your head.
And by learning them as sets, the correct third form is already waiting there when have, has, or had shows up looking for it. Sure, in the heat of a busy kitchen, had ate might accidentally slip out, but just like a waiter serving a tiny side salad when a guest explicitly ordered the grand three-tiered cake, it is never right. The rule is incredibly narrow here. After had, only that third form is allowed. Had eaten is literally the only door left open to you.
Okay, collocation. These are words that naturally happen to have grown up together based on habit rather than logic. This final category isn't a strict rule at all. This is simply about the cliques and the groups of words that just happen to hang out together at the party. There's no deep underlying grammatical law dictating their friendship. They're just words that have grown up together, deeply bonded by pure habit and history rather than any strict mathematical logic. Just think about how incredibly strange it sounds to say strong rain instead of heavy rain, or doing a decision instead of making one. There is no formula or math behind this to memorize. It's just the company these words keep. The only real path through them is reading widely and letting your ear catch up to what native speakers naturally know. It's all about exposure, noticing the pairs that keep recurring in the wild, and ultimately just trusting your ear to guide you.
So let's review the party rules: modals, time travel, articles, as versus like, commas, and collocations. None of these 6 patterns is actually difficult in isolation, but they hide in plain sight inside writing that is already doing something much harder and much more interesting. Whether you're telling a compelling story about a wild party, a frustrating football match, or just a whole beautifully ordinary weekend, your ideas are doing the heavy lifting. But it's these foundational rules that provide the invisible structure holding the entire evening together.
The next time you sit down to tell a story, remember that mastering these small words is the only thing left standing between a good draft and a brilliantly clean one. They might seem like small details in the grand scheme of a bustling, chaotic weekend party, but they are the absolute secret to capturing reality exactly as it happens. So I leave you with this final thought. Will you let these small words stand between a good draft and a clean story?